Hello, everybody. Welcome back to panel 4, second set of panels for the day. This is the golden sweet spot of slots. After lunch, everybody's caffeinated. Had some, some sugar highs going on, so everyone's a bit more lucid than this morning. Our first speaker of the day is Leonid, who's going to give a talk on Messengers of Chaos, Variances, and Representation of Chaos Demons 1 40K. Leonid is a student in the Comparative Literature's Master Program at the Free University of Berlin. They received their bachelor degree in Comparative Literature and Communication from the Free University of Berlin. Besides the study of literature across languages, as mandated by our institution, his institute, he focuses on game studies. So, the right place.
It will be just a time frame.
So, everybody, welcome, Leonid, and we're really excited to hear your talk. Thank you so much.
So, let's start. So, hi and thanks. So that's a very long, complicated title, but the actual motivation for all that was pretty simple. I was talking to a friend several years ago when I was more engaged and more enthusiastically engaged with Warhammer, and this is an attempt to come back to the hobby, so to speak. And we were trying to introduce him to the world, to the fictional universe. And so we were talking about demons and other creatures and other factions at some point, and it's somehow there always came up the word, well, usually it is like that. Usually demons are that. Usually demons are this. And so first the plan on how to answer that question a little bit is I'll talk about that usual part a little bit more. As an answer to that, I'll introduce the concept of heterarchy, at least as explained in one paper, and then I'll talk about chaos demons in two extremes. That is, number one, demonic antagonists as something to be killed, to be dominated, to be hurt. And the only alternative is to get hurt myself if I don't, or to be dominated if I don't. And the other one, as Franz Weber put it, ambivalent opponents. So different demonic influences and concepts of the demonic that are in general dangerous, maybe, influential, certainly, but not quite this arch-enemy antagonist that has to be destroyed. And from that, I conclude that there is a joy in engaging with that multiplicity from a position as the recipient or the hobbyist within the fictional universe. And so this is a work in progress. These are building blocks, much like Lego or Duplo, maybe even more rough. And so first, Warhammer as a universe of the usual. So just to recount that conversation a little bit, well, demons are usually in service to one of the four major Greek gods, and are usually manifestations of them. They are a separated little piece that appears in the material of the universe, unless it's not specified, or unless they are part of Chaos Undivided, or unless they are just somehow different. They're usually highly hostile to non-chaos life, unless tamed or mastered or bargained with, or unless their goals just cannot be ascertained at all. They're usually described as such and such. They're usually defeated using such and such methods, but there seem to be some kind of different example all the time, no matter what statement I'd like to make. And so it seems that this makes no sense at all. To quote from that very paper, at this point, the legally sanctioned fictional universe, the legally sanctioned one, so we're not even talking about fan works, spans a host of different narrative and non-narrative manifestations in media. What do we do with that? That very paper, Rüdiger Heinze, offers one answer, translating a concept from, I believe, neurology at first and sociology later, that the one of heterarchy. In general, the lower left part is the one that interests me. Selection and path-dependent constellation of story worlds, and the person who assembles them into their own fictional universe out of the great offer available through hundreds of books, several games, the film material by now, and certainly the mothership tabletop, as an author I cannot recall right now called it. And so a heterarchy is some kind of structure that isn't hierarchical, undeniable structure, or the representation of relation amongst elements, but still it's very much open. There may be an emphasis depending on what the community or what medium is promoted most, but generally there is an emphasis on me configuring this for myself, or many people configuring this for themselves. There are certainly common elements across the fictional universe, across the fictional universes and the story worlds, the singular story worlds within that. Chaos reappears, the Imperium craft worlds, the Emperor of Mankind, and so on and so on. And even if they're a little bit different, we can still hold on to them to navigate that fictional universe, that hierarchy. The local hierarchy would be the one that I navigate. It is what I have read. It is the micro universe I inhabit, and the global hierarchy would be imagined, speculative. All of the media that form the fictional universe in theory. I will mostly be referring to the experience of local hierarchy on, with the example of a demonic antagonist at first and biggest demons afterwards. And so as you see here, taking some video games, Bolt Gun, Dawn of War, and the Imperial Infantryman's Handbook, which is an in-universe Imperial propaganda piece. We can see demons as one extreme, as something to be exterminated, something to be fought. There is no negotiating with a bolt gun. The action vocabulary, so to speak, is shoot, hide, kill. And so those are monstrous adversaries, Franz Mehra would term them. They are dangerous opponents to be dealt with. With this, we enter what Huizinga and Kala would call the realm of agent, so competition, fighting, either the simulated death struggle or almost like a sport, like a game, because it is. To quote a more recent source, Colin Kremen on video games would consider this a bad affect that diminishes or composes a body's capacity to act. If I encounter such a creature, it may harm me, it may kill me, it may slow me, and so on and so on, and so it has to be dealt with appropriately. Now, this sounds pretty simple, and as Mehra puts it in a recent paper, these rather straightforward roles in providing endless gameplay adversaries are certainly applicable here, and that's what I'm talking about. But these are complex enemies to be mastered in the process of gameplay, and there are meaningful and monstrous implications with all the depth that monster theory will bring into it. Just a little quote here from a recent paper by Gregor. The demonic imagines our embodied being with disgust, turning its otherness into a threat that will close us in on ourselves. But this is not what I'm talking about. This is for now the monstrous adversary taken. That's something that has to be killed in that game. The vocabulary available to me in that game is to shoot, to exterminate. And so demons end up being the arch enemy. Sometimes even in games, I get to bargain with orcs. I get to plan alongside Elder, or I get to read about that. Usually demons are to be destroyed or dominated or temporarily bought or influenced somehow, usually with bad examples, usually with bad consequences, possession, or being used somehow for demonic ends. The greatest expression of that will probably be the great game where the four Chaos Gods and maybe the Emperor of Mankind are engaged in a long struggle, which, according to Mehra, would be close to an almost Christian conception of the demonic, something that is dark and something that is light, something that is good and evil. Is certainly spoken and viewed from the Imperial side. I'm not talking about Chaos Demon players here, or novels like, for example, The Lords of Silence. The demon associated with threat, otherness, something fundamentally evil, and the introduction to most 40k novels reminds us of that. There is no peace amongst the laughter, only an eternity of carnage, slaughter, and the laughter of thirsting gods. This is a realm, once again, of killing, of agon, of competition to survive, playfully or not. Mehra and Bösel also provide an overview of, in case of Bösel, of affects, and in case of Mehra, of narrative, connected to demonic concepts that are far more ambiguous, usually connected with the Greek daimon, but especially Mehra talks about a far more broad set of examples than that. These are very much heuristic concepts, as the authors make clear. So the demonic or daimonic here is not exclusively evil concept. It is something else. It is somehow influential and usually used like that in narrative, as explained by Mehra. So much closer connected to some kind of supernatural spirit, close to humanity, but not quite human. They distribute, they carry affect and Bösel and the study of demons and affects besides fate, love, trauma, grief, deceit, desire, lust, and madness as something that these influences can bring towards you. Mera writes regarding that these ancient characters with that conception of the demonic would be surrounded by spiritual being, influenced by them in everyday thoughts and actions. Mera also talks about the demonic texts, so texts that feature demons and are marked by those tensions within the demonic, the unclear nature of those influences. There's something that is close to human but not quiet. And so within these demonic texts, there usually is a danger to or transgression of boundaries of identity itself. The text itself becomes somehow non-unified, filled with tension through a lack of clarity in what is going on, through intertextuality. And all these tensions are either left ambivalent or forcibly resolved, usually, once again, heuristic, as provided by a quote later. And so I'll come to a quick reading, almost a very superficial reading of Requiem Infernal, great book. And at first, I'd like to compare the two introductory passages. One that, in some observation, is common to nearly every novel within Warhammer 40k. There is no peace among the stars, only an eternity of carnage and slaughter and laughter of facing gods. Once again, this mode of eternal confrontation. And Requiem Infernal begins, this is from the first pages, with a promise of search for truth that will never be resolved and that is almost harmful in itself. It drags you down as you search for it. But therein lies the first and most fundamental terror that I must share with you. Truth is a manifold and slippery beast. And within that, within this non-truth, within this non-truth story world, within the fictional universe of Warhammer 40k, I'd like to talk about three almost examples of demonic influence within that book. So at first would be a purely antagonistic relationship. This is just the same. Kill or be killed, kill or be possessed, and be changed and lose your humanity. These are the exordial void breachers. They are guardsmen and lieutenants. They arrive at the beginning of the story wounded on a world that is especially influenced by especially strongly influenced by chaotic forces. They are slowly taken over by a chaos infection. Once possessed, they never revert back to human. And the only way they can somehow offer resistance is through a final self-sacrificial act, through either resistance or death outright. The second one is Jonathan. Jonathan is a curious character that I can't go in depth about, but for now we'll just call him a chaotic reader and writer within the novel. He is the unwilling helper of a chaos entity that he doesn't quite know about, but tries to pursue to get out of that position. And he carries with him a book that serves both as a guide and as an autobiography, as it charts his life, whether he wants it or not. With him, he carries a mirror through which he entered that demonic path somehow. And so we almost get a Borgesian loop of sorts, of someone who writes a story, who lives through and with mirrors, and who ends up in an irresolvable loop of chaotic influence and chaotic fate, until he, at the end of the book, spoilers, both starts his own journey and kills himself in the same moment. And so this kind of writer-reader figure both attempts to control the cipher chaos, which doesn't work at all. But there is a steady movement, a steady descent into the demonic, a steady exploration of the demonic that just for him doesn't end well. He is, as mentioned on one of the earlier slides, an example of something that seems to embody these all these contradictions, all these framing identities, and here also the framing text, as the introduction to the entire book is contained within the book he carries with him, and the implication being that we are reading the text that drew him into chaotic influence. The third one, no, it's a two, would be Asenapaides or Sister Mercy, a kind of double being. At first, we experience her, we meet her as a sister hospitaller. So, in essence, a healthcare practitioner. Slowly, it is revealed that she is a former torturer and repentia. So, a very gruesome warrior, a very traumatic past, during which she was known, or rather given forcefully, the name Sister Mercy. Throughout the narrative, as you can see, we get interdictions. We get a kind of second voice to her narrative, which is Sister Mercy engaging in dialogue with her, just writing into the text in another font as well. Slowly, she seems to take over Sister Hayaita's body, and we have a completely different resolution to either eternal possession, death, or to this kind of descent into chaos, the entire dissolution of the border between the chaotic and the human, or the demonic and the human. At the beginning of the book, there is already a hint at cooperation with this demonic or not quite demonic side of her. Asenath kicked out from the floor, simultaneously Mercy whipped up her right arm. We're talking about the same body. We're talking about some kind of cooperation, some kind of confluence between the two halves. On the right, you'll find one of the central quotes, in my opinion, in the book. Is she a demon? Sister Asenath asks a apparition of a mentor, and the answer is only if you let her loose. So even the category of the demonic itself isn't quite stable here. We may, as in a warp-influenced world, thoughts become reality. We might be dealing with a manifestation of some kind of trauma. We might be dealing with a manifestation of a second personality, as her past suggests. But we might also be dealing with something that is a demon, but not quite, which can be shaped by almost by the carrier of that demonic influence. And so towards the end, as the resolution nears, Sister Asenath and Sister Mercy cooperate. Asenath almost persuades, out-argues her demonic half, or her not quite demonic half, of the prudent course of action, which is to commit an act of self-sacrifice in order to either survive or save the world. She almost persuades her of the power of imperial faith. Do you want to live? She asked, rising. So Asenath, set me free and I'll show you how. Mercy shouts back. And then, no, we'll go together or not at all. And both go. Both in the end find some kind of agreement to coexist in that one body, which is once again someone human, or not quite anymore, and something that is not quite demonic, but has the potential to cross into that category at some point. And so Requiem Infernal ends up being a display of demonic variants, almost a microcosm of the demonic variants I tried to get a grip on when talking to that friend several years ago. We have straightforward antagonism, kill or be killed, the realm of Agon. We have this dissolution of the human chaos border with all the metafictional elements that seem to come with a readerly or a writerly appraisal of the condition of having to deal with unclear chaotic influences. In Jonah Hyde's case, it ends badly. And we have Sister Mercy or Sister Asenath, whose relationship is very much ambivalent, very much ambiguous, and who end up somehow integrating their two halves into one will, at least for one moment. There seems to be a building acknowledgement and cooperation, and in the end, some kind of mutual understanding about something that shouldn't be possible in many other story worlds within the fictional universe of Warhammer, and that is that something not quite demonic or demon adjacent gets persuaded of the imperial faith and its possible benefits. And so we get here what Mera would probably call a demonic text. Something that very much features demons, something that has a polyphonic and conflicting textual self, as both the script bleeds in and out of one standard, as both other works are indirectly cited, other works by Peter Pervaridi, author of the book, and as the introduction to the book ends up within the book with the implication that we are reading the very text being written as we read it. We get both a consecrated demonic conflict and the necessity of living in contradiction, or rather, we get dead demons, we get dead guardsmen, we get someone who ventures into chaos but cannot resolve those contradictions and dies to it, and we get the integrating resolution with the twin pair of Sister Hades and Sister Mercy. And so to give some kind of answer to that first setting, so usually, chaos demons are in service to one of the four major patron gods. Usually they're hostile to non-chaos life, usually acting in furtherance of the patron god's aim or in search of power, but it's all usual with a universe open to multiple manifestation concepts of the demonic, for which Requiem Infernal seems to me like a showcase and a model, and also a showcase of practices and strategies of sorts of storyboard assembling, for example, by me or you in those local hierarchies within the part of the fictional universe you know. It may be that you accept the multiplicity of concepts of, for example, of the demonic, attempting to integrate it, attempting to make it fit. It may be that you enjoy seeking out the demonic antagonist to fight. It may be that you like to descend into this kind of ambivalence, into this kind of tension, and what ends up as horror, death, and damnation for some of the protagonists of that book ends up as a demonic joy for us. It's the joy of persisting in that position where we have to choose, where we have to explore, and we have to deal with conflicting conceptions of the very same thing within the same hierarchy, within the same fictional universe. And that will be exactly 20 minutes.